Bringing 5 marches to the battlefield is incredibly powerful, so whether you're in KvK Seasons 1 through 3 or you've just entered the season of Conquest, this video is going to help you cook up 5 marches that are actually pretty decent. Hello my friends and welcome back, I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in this video we're going to talk about marches that are pretty easy to make and you should bring to the field so that you can have 5 marches on the battlefield, whether you're KvK Season 1 through 3 or Season of Conquest. And before I get into what these marches are and how many legendary commander sculptures you're going to need, I want to talk for just a moment about why it is that probably every player, yes, every player should bring 5 marches, because I, Chisgule Gaming, have made a mistake. I have been preaching for efficient marches. I have been preaching for players to have a small number of very powerful, very trade positive marches to bring to the battlefield. And I think the answer is that you should just be bringing 5 marches for as long as you can sustain it. Now, why is that? Over 2 years ago, I brought the term murder ball to Rise of Kingdoms. And I did that when I realized that when a player just has more marches than you, it almost doesn't matter if their quality of march is slightly lower. If they had more than you, they're probably going to win. And there is efficiency in numbers. Now, as a kingdom in 75, I am shifting our strategy. And this is going to take time. I don't think people are just going to do this right away. Not everyone, but I hope as many as possible will execute on this. Which is we're going to go from having and encouraging players to bring efficient marches to instead just bring 5. Bring 5 and create 5 really great marches. And that's why I wanted to create this video, to talk about if you're before Season of Conquest, what 5 marches would you work on? And then how do you upgrade those marches when you get to Season of Conquest? And what could you be looking at? Because I'm going to be honest, in my kingdom, if I could just get everybody to bring 5 decent marches, I mean, players in my kingdom have pretty old accounts on average. We should slay a lot of other kingdoms in even 2v1 situations. That's the world I want to get to, is 2 kingdoms versus 1, we still win. And in order to do that, everybody's got to bring 5 marches to the battlefield. So let's start in the pre-Season of Conquest era, KvK Season 1 through 3. And I'm going to try to focus on Wheel of Fortune commanders, and I'm going to try to focus on a number of commanders that actually is achievable, obtainable for most players, low spenders especially, and you just tone it down a little bit, okay? You tone it down a little bit, maybe slightly fewer sculptures here or there if you are not spending or you're more casual. Before I go over these marches, though, I just want to throw onto the screen a chart showcasing the number of legendary commander sculptures you are going to need to take a commander to 5-1-1-1, 5-5-1-1, and so on. And that is referring, by the way, to the skill levels on the commanders. And in general, I mean, if you're going to get to 5 marches, you're going to want to have a few commanders that are not maxed, but are still really efficient. And I, by the way, have made a dedicated video about that topic. If you want to know more about 5-5-1-1 commanders, I'll have a card up at the top. You can watch that at the end of this video. So let's get started, shall we? The first march that I want everybody to work on, if you're in the pre-Season of Conquest, okay, KvK Seasons 1 through 3. As soon as you can get your hands on Esong, I want you to work on him, max him, and pair him with Ethelfled. Ethelfled with Esong is a very solid pairing. You're hiding the Esong behind Ethelfled. In some ways, I want to be able to recommend Esong and El Cid, but you'll just get focused too much if you try to bring that pair. People will still focus Ethel, but at least it's better. Ethel with Esong is very strong, both for the damage and the utility. Esong doesn't care about the fact that you're going to bring mixed troops, so that you get the benefit of all of the skills on Ethelfled. This is a very solid pairing, both for Canyon and in the field. It's respectable. It's going to cost you 700 sculptures to max the Esong, but I think it's definitely worth it. Now, the next pair I want you to work on, after you've completed this one, the Ethel and Esong, is going to be Alexander the Great with Sun Tzu. This is a great open field march. It's got a lot of march speed. It's got a lot of damage. You're putting your Sun Tzu here to elevate that damage a little bit and pump the rage gen, shielding, and debuffs. This is the march where if you don't have the sculptures to get the job done on maxing both Esong and Alex, you can cut a little bit on the Alex so that, 5-5-1-1 Alex is really good. But if you want to do the march as I'm recommending here, that's another 700 sculptures to get to a expertise Alex with Sun Tzu. Now, those are pretty solid marches, right? If you enter the season of Conquest with those 2 marches, you're in a pretty good spot. Of course, there is more. Now, I want to mention that I want you to have 1 march at least of each type. A cav march, an archer march, and an infantry march. That way you can reinforce rallies and garrisons. And if you're reinforcing a rally with this Ethel and Esong combination, you may need to shift the composition of the march to be all archers. That way you can reinforce a rally, okay? But up next is the cav march, and this is a little tough. If you're spending, I'm going to recommend you do a Minamoto primary. If you're not spending, I'm going to recommend that you do a Baibars primary. Now, I want you to have a cav march, and the reason I'm recommending the Baibars is that he actually has a lot of utility. He's going to slow marches by 50%. Yes, that's actually really nice. 50% march speed reduction for 2 seconds is kind of a big deal. So I like Baibars a lot, and the secondary I'm going to recommend. And again, I recognize that most players can't be putting universals all over the place, right? So very simply, the backup commander to your Baibars or your Minamoto is just going to be double C, okay? Very easy. You're going to get them from gold keys, 5-1-XX, whatever other skills you end up in over here. The goal is to get your skills to land over here. There's a lot of utility that comes from the double C, and Cortex and Ruz kind of pointed this out to me when I tried to remove double C from this combo, that the march speed reduction and the attack reduction is really good. So Baibars double C, this is again a starting point. This is not the god tier murder ball. Okay, this is starting point stuff, all right, that most players can obtain. So Mina or Baibars with double C secondary. There's your cav march. Literally 0 universal legendary commander sculptures go into that march, which is a part of why we're recommending it. Now, up next is a march that is going to use Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc is, of course, very, very strong for her buffs. You're going to use her in Canyon basically forever, which is really great, until maybe you get Trajan, and then maybe you switch off of Joan. Joan is, I've got videos dedicated to why she's so fantastic. She is going to be a secondary commander, and the primary commander, you're going to have to take to 5-5-1-1, and you've got a choice. It's either going to be Richard I, who's a lot easier to obtain because he comes from the Wheel of Fortune, or it's going to be Constantine. The choice is yours, which of those you use as a primary. As I mentioned, the Constantine is a little harder to obtain because he comes from the Mightiest Governor, whereas the Richard I comes from the Wheel, and almost every new player to the game can't help but to spin the wheel for Richard I and get some amount of his sculptures. So take either of those to 5-5-1-1, pair with the Joan of Arc secondary, and you've got something great for Canyon and solid in the field. Especially in, remember, this is KvK Seasons 1-3, okay? Now, the final march, that's 200 sculptures total, by the way. The final march here is going to be a 0 universal sculpture investment, and that is going to be Charles Martel primary. Ideally, you get to 5-5-1-1, but even 5-3-1-1. Heck, because we have skill lock these days, 5-1-1-1. You start using him, you pop the skill lock to get the rest of your skills in this second skill, and you're off to the races. Martel primary and Bjorn secondary. Now, this commander is shockingly good. Shockingly good. There is nothing to be ashamed of in a Martel-Bjorn combination. It is very strong. Bjorn is making it so that the target takes extra skill damage. In a lot of ways, I would have liked for him to be a primary somewhere, but I also tried to pick primary commanders that, like, with the exception of the Baibars, there are going to be other things that will get targeted before your marches, right? Like if you use Bjorn primary, you're kind of saying, hey, everybody, hit me first. And that's just a reality of bringing epic commander primaries to the battlefield in Rise of Kingdoms, even in KvK Season 1-3. And especially like if you're a newer player and somebody's migrated back, like, yeah, they're going to try to focus you if you bring them as the primary. So you're hiding Bjorn behind the Martel. I think that's a solid choice. That is a 0 sculpture investment. And to make the murder ball, as I described, that is 1,600 legendary commander sculptures. I recognize that's not a small number. I did not include in that count the number of sculptures you need for commanders you're getting from gold keys, because I'm not suggesting you should put universals into them. I don't think you should. Focus on the Alex, focus on the Esong, and either Richard or Constantine, take them to that good spot. And you're in a pretty decent place by the time you get to the end of KvK Season 3. Now, from here, when you enter Season of Conquest, it's all about getting upgrades as fast as you can to those marches, because otherwise, you're going to experience no small amount of pain. So the first march that I want to upgrade is your Alex Sun Tzu, and I don't love this, but it's a starting point. I want to get you into a Guan Alex combo, and to start, just max the first skill. 5-1-1-1. Yeah, I know that kind of sucks. And if you want to put more sculptures into him, depending on your spend level, please be my guest. Make his skills higher than that, okay? But I wanted to spend the least amount of sculptures possible to get, hey, you've got Guan Alex on the field, and you're silencing stuff, and the Alex is phenomenal. That is a really solid starting point. That is a grand total of 760 sculptures put into this march, although you already put 700 into the Alexander the Great. So it's just 60 sculptures to get to a Guan 5-1-1-1 or 5-1-XX, depending on how much you want to skill up that other stuff with the Alex secondary. The next thing I want to do is really upgrade your E-Song pairing. And I don't think you should use them as a primary because that'll make you a target. I want to get you into a Ramses E-Song combo. 5-5-5-1. Max the first 3 skills. You could start with just the first 2. 5-5-1-1. That would be a very small amount of sculptures, 200 to get that done. But to get the first 3 skills maxed, that's 390 sculptures from unlock to getting to 5-5-5-1. That is a grand total of 1,090 sculptures put into the Ramses E-Song March, but you've already put these sculptures into the E-Song, so it's actually just the 390 sculptures to get Ramses into a solid spot, and then you've got a really, really great Archer March. So you've got a great Infantry March, a great Archer March. Now I got to get you a solid Cavalry March, and this one, you've got a lot of options, okay? But the one I'm going to recommend to start, I think, is actually going to be Saladin with Ethelfled. Now, Saladin Ethelfled actually does a lot of damage. You get a lot of utility, and you're hiding the Ethelfled somewhere safer, okay? If you've got her as a primary, you're probably going to get focused. So the Saladin Ethelfled combo is really efficient. That is a 5-5-5-1. That's 390 sculptures. You could have obtained this commander before the Season of Conquest, so you could have moved to this much sooner. So obviously, you could replace the Minamoto or the Baibars sooner with Saladin if you happen to have him. I'm going to assume most players won't. By the time you get to Season of Conquest, maybe you'll have him. Now, there are other cavalry marches that you could use. For example, you could go for a 5-5-1-1 XY, and you could pair with like a double C secondary if you wanted. Again, the double C secondary is a 0 sculpture investment, but the XY is like really good. Like that's going to be really good for your canyon and really solid in the field. That's one option. Saladin William is another option. XY William is another option. But I think you need the front end of that William combo before you move into William, okay? So start with the primary commander, either the XY or the Saladin, get them to a good spot, and eventually you could work on the William. And then, I mean, you're in a great spot. But just starting off, I've given you a bunch of priorities already with the Guan, with the Ramses. So my recommendation there, again, it's just the Saladin with the Ethelfled. You already got the Ethelfled. 390 sculptures on the Saladin. You could start with 5-5-1-1 if you wanted even. Use skill lock, you max the third and kind of at your leisure. And that's a pretty decent starting point. Now, the next march, I actually am not changing at all. Richard or Constantine with Joan. Just stick with that as you enter into the Season of Conquest. That's like a fine place to start. And your Martel, we're going to pair up with Sun Tzu now that he's been freed up. Martel Sun Tzu is a really great combo. Very respectable for newer players into the game. And the Martel protects you a little bit. People generally don't go out of their way to target that march. So that gives you a 5-1-XX Guan with Alex. That gives you a Ramses 5-5-5-1 with E-Song. Saladin 5-5-5-1 with Ethel. The Richard 5-5-1-1 or Constantine 5-5-1-1 with Joan of Arc. And then the Martel 5-5-1 whatever with the Sun Tzu. That is a really decent murder ball, to be perfectly honest. That is a grand total of 840 sculptures above and beyond what I already recommended that you spend before the Season of Conquest was even a place that you had arrived at, okay? And that gives you a bunch of really great options to upgrade to, by the way. If you wanted to go all in on archers, then you max out your Ramses, right? If you wanted to go heavily on that Guan Yu Alex combo, great, max the Guan, pair with Alex, great combo. If you wanted to go all in on a great Cav combo, you either max out your XY or your Saladin, you pair with the William, or you don't even max them. Like, they're so good. 5-5, 5-1 with the XY William. I've talked about that combo a lot. If every member of my kingdom brought some flavor of these marches that I was just talking about, man, I just really feel like we would level up as a kingdom in terms of our ability to not just win in the field when we pick battles that we want to fight, but to dominate the field pretty much everywhere we go. I mean, it just would be very powerful if we could arrive in that place. Now, of course, there are a bunch of other really great options for efficient marches. I'll throw some of that in a table up on the screen just so you could see some other upgrade paths or things you could consider, like Artemisia with E-Song, which I don't think is good as the Ramses. I think the Ramses is a better recommendation than the Artemisia, which is why I recommended it. The Cyrus with E-Song, which is like another option, but again, not as good as what I recommended. There's a lot of really great stuff out there. Heck, you could even weave in a Leonidas to this murder ball and do like a Guan Leo with a 5-5-1-1 Leo. That would be very reasonable as well. And if you've got any other ideas for great combinations for players to use just as they're entering the season of Conquest, definitely leave a comment down below. I think that getting to everybody bringing 5 marches is very important, and everybody doing the farming they need to do to be able to support that is important. To save enough speed ups that you can fight in the field is important, but you know what? Let me know down below in the comments. Are there other combinations we should be looking at or considering for this 5-march murder ball for players that, like, this is supposed to be really obtainable, like extremely obtainable for just about everybody. And, people have their preferences. They'll focus one thing or something else, but we gave a path for archers, infantry, or cavalry. If you want to focus, you can focus. That's fine. But you can still get those respectable marches onto the field and do some damage. Not as an individual on their own running by themselves. That's not the play. But as a big group, we all go together and see if we can get some stuff done. I think that could be pretty cool. And if that's something you want to be a part of in Kingdom 75, we've left Imperium. And we actually are about to have a massive migration into the kingdom. Over 300 players have said they want to come here. We're bringing 41 players into Wolf, which is kind of a big deal. I don't think we've ever brought so many players into the Wolf Alliance in a migration before, in a single migration. So if you want to join that, link will be in the description to join Kingdom 75. The migration's going to happen within the next week. It's going to be a big deal, and then boom, we'll be back in Imperium, and that's it. We'll be locked up until our next KvK. So if you want to get in, this is the time. And until next time, you have fun, smash in the kingdom, join us in 75, try out the swarm strategy. Let's see if we can make it work. Lots of other kingdoms have made it work, so now let's make it work in 75.